The intangible vibe was popularised in the 90s when it diverged from the shorthand reference to a vibraphone and instead became used to describe the vibration or atmosphere of a place. Today you could interchange it with an online trend or bandwagon. Whatever you see it as an instrument of or the vibrations of an oncoming earthquake, the existence of a vibe does not mean that its intention is inherently good. Communism was a vibe too, let's remember. We are joined by Brianna McKee, who has written an article in the magazine this week titled "It's the Constitution, It's the Vibe, It's Water Justice." Brianna, welcome to Spectator TV.
Thank you.
There's no doubt that the Canberra bubble, the university class and the Teal doctors' wives have been struck by a vibe when it comes to the voice to Parliament. Do voters understand this referendum as a substantial legal and constitutional change, or are they more riding the feeling of the whole thing, Brianna?
That's a really good question, and I think voters don't know much about the voice, and that's because not much detail has actually been given. But the IPA has done analysis on this issue. We've looked at the history of judicial activism in Australia and also the New Zealand experience. And the Waitangi Tribunal, which is New Zealand's equivalent to the voice to Parliament, we've looked at this and there are three key issues. The first is that the voice could become involved in every aspect of life. This is including education, defence, taxes, interest rates, even the selection of High Court judges. The second issue is that the voice could gain veto power over important government decisions. So with the Waitangi Tribunal, it now has veto power over certain legislation, and there are some laws only the Maori can actually suggest reforms to. And the third issue is that it could become impossible to repeal, defund, or reform the voice if there are problems after its creation. And that's because it's in the Constitution. The Albanese government, the proposed legislation they have is to insert a provision in the Constitution which permanently divides Australians on the basis of race. So these are some of the problems, and what we are really doing is importing the failures of New Zealand to Australia.
Well, your article actually asks what comes next after this vibe is codified into law. And you write that the Australian Centre is exploring the relationship between country, climate and colonialism to, and I quote, interrogate the settler state's incapacity to manage the ecology of this continent, end quote. And this includes ideas like water justice. Now, racist water sounds a bit scary. Is the vibe coming from Australia? Is the vibe coming for Australia's rivers, lakes and seas to lock Australians out?
So Melbourne University is essentially leading the charge. In 2022, their Australian Centre launched Undoing Australia, quite ironically, and this was a direct attack on democracy, on equality and on the free market. And this year, they've launched another research series and the focus is water justice. And in this series, water justice means two things. The first is that when the British came to Australia, they stole the land and they stole the water. So we need new pathways to water justice. But this is really just doublespeak for handing over the governance of our nation's assets to Indigenous people, so privileging one group over another. And the second issue that they are sort of interrogating is giving rights to rivers. And this is part of the broader green sustainability agenda, which is associated with a shift towards making nature equal to or greater than people, which is essentially paganism rebranded. So these are some of the ideas that are coming out of universities, and we know that what is taught in universities today is actually the policy of governments tomorrow.